If you've been scrolling through endless telescope options and still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've spent the last few weeks testing a handful of entry-level scopes that promise big night ski views without breaking the bank. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first pulled the Astronomical telescope adult out of its box, the first thing I noticed was how little I had to wrestle with tools. The whole thing comes pre-assembled on a sturdy tripod, and the quick-release attachment lets you snap the tube on and off in seconds. That matters because most beginners end up spending more time trying to tighten bolts than actually looking through the eyepiece. The no-tool setup also means you can get it out of storage, aim it at a backyard, and be ready for a clear view within a couple of minutes, a real convenience if you're the type who likes spontaneous stargazing sessions on a clear night. What sets this model apart from a lot of other budget scopes is the slow-motion control ring on the altitude and azimuth axes. Instead of a jerky, clicky feel, the gears glide enough that you can nudge the telescope gently to track a moving object. I tried following the International Space Station as it skimmed across the sky, and the smooth tracking let me keep it in view for the whole pass without frantic reaming. For casual observers who want to watch planets or bright deep space objects without a motor drive, that manual smoothness is a surprisingly practical feature. The optics are described as fully coated, erect image glass, and that wording actually translates into something useful on the ground. Because the image stays upright, the same scope works for terrestrial viewing, think spotting a distant mountain ridge or checking out a wildlife scene during the day. I took it on a hike and used it to scan a valley from the trailhead. The view was crisp, and the upright image meant I didn't have to mentally flip everything upside down, which can be a real headache with many beginner refractors. When you switch back to the night sky, the same coating helps reduce flare from city lights, making the moon's craters pop a little more clearly than they would with an uncoated lens. Now, let's talk about who should actually consider buying this. If you're a newcomer to astronomy, live in a suburban area with moderate light pollution, and you want a telescope that can handle both night ski and daytime spotting without needing a separate set of lenses, this is a solid entry point. The quick setup and easy tracking mean you spend more time observing and less time fiddling. Families with kids who are curious about the stars also get a safe, sturdy instrument that won't collapse under a little rough handling. The tripod feels weighted enough to stay put, and the accessory tray keeps extra eyepieces and a small collimation tool right at hand. On the flip side, seasoned hobbyists who are chasing faint nebulae or want high magnification planetary detail will likely find this scope a bit limiting. The aperture isn't large enough to pull out the subtle structure of a distant galaxy, and the manual tracking, while smooth, can't replace a motorized mount for long-exposure astrophotography. If you already own a decent mount or are planning to upgrade to one soon, you might feel constrained by the basic altazimuth movement. Also, the professional tag in the product name can be misleading. This is definitely not a research-grade instrument, so if you're budgeting for a telescope that will serve as a long-term mainstay, you might outgrow it within a year or two. A practical strength worth highlighting is the built-in accessory tray. In my testing, I kept a spare 2 Barlow lens, a pair of low-power eyepieces, and a small cleaning cloth right on the tray while I swapped them out. That convenience saved me from having to set up a separate table or risk dropping something on the ground. The tray also doubles as a place to store a quick-release strap, which is handy if you ever need to transport the scope to a dark sky site and want to keep everything together. A hidden trade-off comes from the very convenience of the pre-assembled design. The tripod, while stable for casual use, isn't as adjustable as a more expensive, fully modular system. If you need to raise the eye level significantly or lower it for a low-angle terrestrial shot, you're limited to the fixed height range built into the legs. It's a small compromise, but one that can matter if you're trying to view something close to the ground, like a nighttime animal track, without crouching. Another nuance is the lack of a built-in finder scope. The manufacturer expects you to rely on the slow-motion knobs and the central crosshair that's etched onto the focuser. For a total beginner, that can add a learning curve because you're essentially blind searching until you locate a bright object like the moon or Jupiter. Once you get the hang of it, it's not a deal-breaker, but it's worth noting that many competing models in this price range include a small red dot finder that makes the initial alignment less intimidating.